And
Oh,
so we have about an inch and a half of plaster dust from when he sanded it down before he painted it in the TV room.
oh,
And, there's a little blob of plaster on the corner of the TV, which I wasn't real pleased about.
oh.
The guy that has done the work for us has always been excellent, and I think he will be appalled when he sees this. But he's coming over sometime today to finish cleaning up.
Yeah, we had when we had our kitchen redone, we worked with the contractor to be absolutely sure that there were plastic barriers every place. And even
Mhm.
then, afterwards, after the plastering guy came in, I had to go climb up on a ladder and clean a couple of tall spots that he missed, like on top of
Mhm.
one of our air conditioning units. And they
Yep.
just it comes with the territory.
Well, it's funny because the boss, the guy that I contracted for this, has done a couple of other jobs for us, and has always left places perfectly clean. And this was somebody that he brought in because he's not a plastering expert, but the guy that he brought
That's
in
true.
is.
John's
Yeah,
iPad too.
what are you gonna do?
Yes, I understand.
So, so what else is new?
Right, nothing. Well, Bob is here.
Hi, Bob.
He's connected.
I'm here as well. I'm just making coffee.
Hi,
Right.
Brian.
Okay.
We have two new cats, which has been very exciting. I don't think one will photobomb us this morning. He hasn't got the nerve up to come into the office yet, but he might. We'll find out.
There we go.
Okay.
Hey, Bob, just so you know, I got a call on Friday. I've got an HVAC guy coming in to do some work on one of my mini splits. And they're coming theoretically at 10 o'clock. So I may have to bomb out, or I set up my iPad downstairs here. So hopefully if I have to, I could let him work while I'm still on the meeting. But whatever is critical, it might be better to, do early.
Yeah, I have
Okay.
I have a worker coming sometime this morning also, and I thought how I would be up and ready to let him in, but he's watching the Canal Cup on my iPad upstairs.
Oh, well, we won.
So I understand.
And my next door neighbor's son, I believe, scored the winning goal.
Awesome.
Yes, he did. In the fourth overtime.
Great game.
Yep.
Okay, I've switched to my cell phone because the Zoom on my laptop has been going through some kind of an upgrade, and
Yeah, mine did too.
it's hung in Zoom Workspace, and I don't know what that is. Okay, and then
If you just close out of it and reopen it, it'll be fine. That's what mine did.
Okay, I'm going to stay on the cell phone for a minute. 1 second. Let me get the agenda up here. Apologies. I think we can start with. It is now 9:02. We can start with attendance. Okay, I note that I'm here. Wendy's here. John Frank is here. Brian is here. Jed is still somewhere in the Caribbean. So I note that we have a quorum. Okay. Further, Jen McGrail is online. So Bourne Community TV is broadcasting this and recording this. So one moment. I'm trying to get, boy, my laptop is totally hung with whatever this update is. Wendy has started. Wonderful, Wendy. Thank you.
Well,
Okay.
okay. I sent this out yesterday. I meant to send it a little sooner, but anybody got anything to add?
You saw something there. Oh boy, I thought I brought a copy downstairs. There was something there about Jed and I preparing a report for recommendations to do with the
tech specs for to give to the town administrator.
Right here.
Right. And I thought we didn't,
Yeah.
I don't recall that specifically. We talked about the fact that we had given them recommendations with our report and in conjunction with the report from the Cape Cod Council. And that beyond that, Jed was feeling was, hey, we've done what we can do. I just wanted to pass on.
We mentioned what date was this? Because we talked about it 2 meetings. What was the date?
Right.
Ryan?
I talked about the fact that I went to the library parking lot and discovered that in fact, the
Yeah, that
reception.
was right. That was in the previous minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in fact, I wanted to pass it on to Anne Marie, who is happily here today, because maybe she can just put the bug in someone's ear to just be sure that I know that the library was a priority in the Cape Cod Commission report. And we were just concerned that I went and tested it just to be sure. And inside the library, the Wi-Fi is rather good. I went into all corners, every place, it's fine. Outside, there obviously it's very sketchy. So to just make sure that if they can just say when they put the contract out or whatever, or the specifications, that they should really focus on that library parking lot, because it's
Right.
as I said, you could jump from 5 feet away, that the reception and the speed would change vastly. So they as was suggested by Jed, they just need to put in something that addresses the outside, probably something in a weatherproof box that's attached to the building,
Right.
so that they can just make the Wi-Fi available. That was the only thing we was really concerned with, and that, and the fact that we went to the 2 public areas that had been pointed out by Peter Meyer, and in neither one of them, either the fire station in Monument Beach or the
Right.
marina, we couldn't find
Excuse
anything.
me. Yeah, I put all that in the previous minutes. Is there anything? What should I?
No.
Do you want me to just
Yeah,
take this
because
part
we talked
out?
about, but we had 2 discussions. One meeting, we talked about the results of your testing. And the
Right.
second, we talked about, and I think we at the very end, we just said, you know what, we can ask the question, put together the questions for the town manager to send to the IT person, so we know what their, standard capability set is. Like, we're gonna just put together the correct question, so they could, know if they can handle the Wi-Fi on a like Open Cape backbone connected network. Like, are they able to do it over VPN?
Okay.
Are they doing it? What's their stock setup for that?
So is this sufficient unto the day thereof, or do you need other
I think
details
so.
in here?
I think it looks fine for that one, because this is the second discussion, right?
Yes.
The previous one was when we talked about the Wi-Fi test results. So yeah, that looks
Right.
fine.
Okay, we're good.
I'm just
Anything
concerned
else?
that Anne Marie, I mean, do you think that Marlene would welcome suggestions, or is she going to handle it herself?
Let me get me off mute. At this point in time, I mean, you can coordinate those things, but the huge focus right now is strictly on the situation with the cyber. I mean, we
Right.
will be updated in executive session with respects to what outcomes have happened so far on Tuesday. So they are completely consumed with that focus. I'm not saying that they will ignore it, but I don't think you'll get an answer right away. And, some things have had to be placed on the back burner. But I have actually a library feasibility study meeting on Wednesday, so I can see if the library, there's members of the Board of Trustees, if they have any information on that
Right.
process.
And if they want any suggestions, we're happy, as we said in our report, we are happy
Right.
to offer
Right.
anything we can do in terms of, interviewing potential suppliers or whatever. But yeah, I didn't want to overstep our bounds. That's why I kind of thought we would just bring it to you, because you're, connected to everybody. And then if necessary, just say, hey, these folks are willing to give a suggestion. And I realize right now they're more consumed with the cybersecurity issue.
Right.
That's
And
all.
I have expressed that to
Okay.
Liz, the assistant town administrator, and for the committee, that they certainly are and would be willing, if any questions arise, to reach out. And she indicated that she absolutely would. So
Okay,
And
then
discussed in the last meeting, MBI also, as previously discussed, since this is just minutes, MBI has cybersecurity people that they offer up to towns in these circumstances as well.
Ah, really? Has anybody contacted them from the town? Doubtful.
I have, they've been very circumspect about what's going on, and maybe for security reasons.
This is minutes, so we don't want to have a discussion about
right.
it. We're just.
Nor is
I
it
only brought it up
frankly, is
as
that our
previously
business.
discussed.
So we're going to move along here. Okay, any other changes, additions, corrections to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Second,
Who made the motion?
John.
John.
I think if
Okay.
Wendy stops sharing, we'll be able to see us.
Oh yeah, sorry.
All right,
We'll put that away for now.
there we go.
Okay. moving along. Again, apologies. I've had to reboot my laptop again. Whatever Zoom is trying to do, it's hanging everything. But the next item is communications. I'm sorry. Any outside communications? Anne Marie, I realize you just got back from a trip, but are you aware of any?
Not as of yet, not related to SciTech.
Okay. I will tell you, I've had one dialogue actually with a couple of some residents in Monument Beach with regard to the issue of their being able to get television program over their new FiOS service.
Netflix too. John's iPad too.
In any case, the bottom line was I told them that I had mentioned that the license might be exclusive, and they said no. Then they quoted me all of the legislation, etc. And I said that is correct, and I misspoke. It is non-exclusive, but it's also non-discriminatory, and that Verizon or any other competitor other than Comcast, in order to offer television service, is going to have connections and be able to offer it to every resident, every served address town-wide. And they may in fact be listening on the call today, because they were asking a number of questions about would the BEAD grant, etc., carry forward and allow Verizon to extend to the rest of the area, to the unserved areas that they have in town. And I said, essentially, stay tuned. That's an item that's up for discussion right now. Anybody else have anything else to add? Did I misspoke?
Well, yeah. There's one other item which I understand is that for Verizon to install internet service, they don't need any kind of licensing with the town. However, if they go for cable TV, they have to create, I believe, some kind of contract with the town, non-exclusive like Comcast, and that is a admittedly small barrier, but maybe something that they, just don't want to deal with right now. It's just another barrier for them to overcome. So,
well, again, that's right now. That's way down the line. They first need to be able to connect every residence and every business in the town, and that's down the road. So they're not even going to think about cable TV service. And I told those folks, I said, again, you're on your own. Either cut the cord and don't use Comcast cable TV service and just use streaming apps over FiOS, or potentially some other way to do that via. There are some satellite TV providers, and they were not satisfied. But I said, it's just a long process.
People don't
anyway.
understand that streaming is different from the bundle that like a Comcast or somebody will provide. And I think if they could understand that, there would be a lot more people streaming.
I think this falls under digital equity for sure. So,
well, exactly. And the folks are not on Zoom today specifically because they don't know how. Well, they don't do Zoom. They said they may be watching on TV. So, Jeffrey and Joan, feel free to send comments back to us, or send comments to the directly to the select board, and they'll get down to us about the current status on this whole process.
Well, that can be part of digital equity training, as you point out.
Yeah. Keep my eyes peeled for the next digital equity grant, so that we apply for it and get the funding, because that's squarely digital equity, and the state and the feds have lots of digital equity money sloshing around. So we just have to wait for the next grant to come our way, and we'll review the terms and conditions.
Following on from that, and I don't know whether I put this further down, but I got a communication late last week from David Eisenberg, again from the Falmouth Initiative, who was wanted to know specifically what our committee was doing in terms of digital equity with the town's $70,000 grant. And I pointed it out that other than making recommendations on kind of public Wi-Fi and maybe later in terms of education. We were not really involved in that. And he said that Falmouth is considering using a good portion of their money to fund digital equity services. And I think he called it the General Services Center in Falmouth. And he said, and that's intended to be something that's beyond provide services, and they will provide to anybody in the Upper Cape beyond residents or visitors to Falmouth. And he said there would be an opportunity to perhaps team with that organization. And one thing that we discussed briefly was some kind of the trainer program, because he said the likelihood of getting semi-mobile elderly people to come into the center was relatively small. But if there were a trainer that could stop by individual houses, he thought there would be a lot more penetration to the I'm trying to what he called them, digital uninformed, I
Navigators.
think. No.
Un-
The clients are digital uninformed,
oh,
is what or something close to that is what the apparently the official lingo in the state and the feds is. And I
digital naive, perhaps?
no, it's not naive, but it's something like not unconnected. I think it's just not uneducated. And forgive me, I don't have my note on what
Something
he
like
actually
that.
said. But in any case, he said they would consider doing training for trainers at their center who could then spread out and work in the individual towns. And I said, in terms of any financial contribution, et cetera, or participation by the town, he has to start with the town administrator.
Mhm.
So is that a fair description of the chain of command here, Anne Marie?
Yes,
Like she said.
because once the select board gives the TA the charge of, doing what we had asked to do with respects to that grant, she then formulates the program and who's in charge and how it gets expended.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, very good. Okay, I think we now we're ready to move on with our regular agenda. Let's see. Wendy, could you pull up the agenda again? I'm busy rebooting my computer,
Sorry.
and there's something on that just got installed under Zoom that it does not like. So it's going to be a second for me to get this up.
I hate it when you do that.
I think old and ongoing business report recommendations and recommendations to select board.
I
About-
don't have the agenda on my computer. I put it on my note taking and then I pitch it. Sorry.
In terms of the report to the select board, the document that we produced, I sent to MJ and to Anne Marie and asked if we could get some time on the agenda at the earliest possibility, just because of the time critical nature of some of these decisions. And I do, and it's not on the agenda for next Tuesday. And Anne Marie, if you could advocate to get us on as early as possible. The time critical nature of all of this, and I'll just give a very high level summary, Brian, hop in and correct me, is that the decision as discussed in that report, and as we're going to discuss in a minute, about kind of short circuiting public open bidding for the BEAD funds, given the over 1,000 unserved and underserved locations that we have in Bourne, it has been kind of short-circuited in what appears to be a last-minute decision by MBI to just give the money directly to whoever got a gap grant for any particular town. And the only grant that's been given for Bourne under Gap 1 or Gap 2 was a $37,000 grant to Comcast to serve 10 or fewer unserved locations and based on some sort of hand waving that they did, that declared all these other locations as at least available at that time as ineligible for any funding. So they nominally they used our letter of support and said that by serving 10 positions, 10 locations, they could fulfill, I guess, I'm inferring that they said that they would be in compliance with the conditions in the town's letter of support. That's happened in other towns too, not quite as egregious as might affect Bourne, with funding for, connecting over 1,000 locations, as well as CAIs. And there's kind of a background uproar over this right now. And it's unclear where that's going to go.
Can I want to just point out something. I unfortunately, because I'm on my iPad, I don't have the document in front of me. But if I recall, the letter of support for Comcast laid out some very specific conditions. And according to the wonderful notes that Brian put together, which I've read through, they have to adhere to those provisos that we put in that letter of support. And a lot of it has to do with how many splits are done and the speed of the system overall for the entire town. And according to what Brian says, and I believe what MBI is saying, we can withdraw the letter of support entirely if we want, or they have to comply. And I don't see them complying with that by just serving 4 or 10 previously unserved locations. Am I correct in that, Brian?
Based on the evidence we have available, it's not possible for them to be in compliance with the letter of support.
Okay, so therefore they would not be entitled to the funds.
Again, I guess we can move right into it, but the current status is we're trying to determine, and this is being made with other phone calls. When is the decision to again hardwire the BEAD funds directly to the gap winner in each
Gap
town?
funds. So the
Gap funds.
Gap funds based upon the BEAD challenge.
Right, that's true. Okay, they'll take budget money, supplement the gap fund awardee, the gap grantee, with extra funds taken from funds that normally would be put out for competitive bid under BEAD. Is that a fair summary, Brian?
Yeah.
Say that
Okay.
again.
MBI. So
Yeah.
so for reference, let's back out. Like I've put up on the screen the census block group that we challenged, which is already a miracle based upon the rules, bordering on impossible, and the only one in the entire state. So effectively, these speed challenge rules are rules that only apply to Bourne. For almost all intents and purposes. Like every other town, it's 5 or 10 locations. It's, a couple of houses got challenged. Bourne is the only one with an entire census block group. So the magnitude on Bourne is going to be, 10x anybody else. So this is our census block group, and they decided that anybody who gained locations in the challenge for BEAD, that instead of awarding these under BEAD, they're going to award them under GAP to whoever already applied. And they're doing this after everyone applied for GAP, knowing that every single town with GAP possible funds was only going to be, 10, 20, 30, 40 locations. So the pool of bidders was quite small. And so instead, MBI wants to award this to whoever won GAP in Bourne.
Right. And Verizon did not win anything, neither did Open Cape. So that only leaves one bidder.
Well, no, actually,
not e-
Verizon, we managed through the public records process to get a copy of the grant applications. And so we found Verizon's grant application for Bourne. And
Right,
it
but-
appears
yeah.
to be compliant with the support letter we already issued Verizon, since they are doing 1 gig fiber service to the 20 or 30 unserved that were in the gap list, and they were going to serve all of them. Whereas Comcast somehow exempted locations from having to serve.
So
Improperly, possibly, but that's a conversation for another day.
Right, but my understanding is that Verizon was awarded no gap funds for Bourne.
So the gap isn't final. So at this point, we're at the like 98% mark, and MBI is showing some of the towns what the outcomes could look like when their board meets possibly in 2 weeks and finalizes everything. So we are at the 11th hour. Gap isn't awarded, but it's close.
Okay.
So essentially, without any further guidance or enlightenment from MBI about their schedule, we have a putative drop dead date on this, or a finalization date that's about at their board meeting. Do you have the date on that board meeting, Brian? Do you recall?
No, I've got a script scanning the website every day, waiting for it to update. They don't release an email list of this, so it's not set yet, but it's usually mid-month. So 14, 13, 16, somewhere. Yep.
Somewhere in there.
Right.
The issue, again, going back in mid-November, Brian communicated with the real technical lead in MBI, an engineer named Cornell Robinson, who wrote back, and I think Brian quoted it in one of the documents, saying that in fact they were fully aware of the conditions that Bourne had put in Comcast's letter and in the other letters, and that effectively they would be a requirement of the grant, or would be considered in the granting. And then when was that meeting with the call with MBI, the Friday afternoon meeting, the 17th of January, the director rescinded that, basically said that effectively, irrespective of whether those conditions were complied with or not, they were just going to award more funding to who they had identified as the likely grantee for GAP 2. Which was Comcast. Anyway, so that's the major issue there. We have a drop dead date. So one of the issues before this committee is, do we request and another conversation, I should say, and I don't have the date, Brian, just correct me if I'm wrong. They said the town did have the option, the select board, to withdraw their letters of support.
Same call on the 17th with Michael, telling us both what happened with GAP and BEAD, and telling us this withdrawal requirement.
Right. But I think the important point has been pointed out by Brian, is that the BEAD allocation of money, which could be as much as $8 million, can only go, for reasons that I don't understand. MBI is saying that money can only go to anybody that won a GAP grant, which basically would close out, at least for what we know from the moment, for anybody but Comcast. It would not allow free competition. It
did not seem plausible based on anyone's read of BEAD or GAP that this was an outcome that could occur.
So that is what I think we need to point out to the select board, to have them write a letter, and I think not only to the people at MBI, but with copies to our legislators, because this is completely upside down. It's just competition is the American way. I mean, this is why we make better markets, and they're, at least from what we can see, they are restricting the competition to no competition.
Just another side of this coin is that for various other reasons, MBI has changed the rules about providing service to CAIs. All of the efforts of all of the towns in Barnstable County, I think they identified, what's the number, 961 CAIs, of which about 500 are eligible to be served under BEAD. And for various reasons. Go ahead, Brian.
That number is questionable because the 961 were released as all fundable, but some of them might be a mistake, and so we're thinking the real number is closer to 500. So that number is, in case we have to deal with it later, is fudgeable because of they might have incorrectly labeled a few of them as that already have Open Cape and weren't on the map with that Open Cape. So, that number might change over time. The
Right.
five to
And
900 is the realistic number.
statewide, it's the big number, the gross number without some possible service that didn't get identified is on the order of 5,000 CAIs, and so those are all eligible to be a good portion of them are eligible to be served with some of the BEAD money here. So some of the
All of them that don't currently have gig up and down are eligible.
Which is all of them. None of them have gig up and down as far as we know.
yeah.
So,
In any case,
and they changed the rules in what way, Bob?
the big question there is they put a new rule in that basically a very strict interpretation of the NTIA overbuild rule, which essentially says for instance, you cannot lay fiber optic lines in the same routes that are being served by another provider. And they limited that to 10% of the distance. Is that right, Brian? That's the number?
Yeah, so overbuild is when you go through a served area, which is essentially everywhere in Massachusetts except for the locations listed in these grants. So you have to pass serve to get there. They only allow you to recover 10% of the grant. So if you say you're doing 10 million in locations, you can only get 1 million in overbuild to reach them. The original idea was to get fiber to all these pockets based on the NTIA language. NTIA wanted future-proof fiber built out to all these locations, so it was deeper into neighborhoods everywhere, and could be reused later. And MBI wrote rules that were mostly contrary to what NTIA wrote as what was supposed to happen, and strictly limited the overbuild so that it makes it economically unviable for someone to build fiber to the CAIs, except for maybe the closest cable incumbent who possibly could, run a line to a node just for that location. But it basically wrote the rules contrary to what NTIA intended, and I put the copy pasted those into some of the documents that I sent out last night.
Right. I would think the
Okay.
only exception, Brian, might be if they consider an area served by an existing ISP, if it makes a certain standard. Now, the standard used to be, I think it was 20 down, 20 up, and 100 down. And is it for CAIs? It's now 1 gig, 1 gigahertz, 1 gigabit in either direction, up and down. So the question would become: does the 10% rule apply if that service is not really being? And even though you're crossing lines, you're crossing lines with a service that doesn't provide the speed that NTIA is endorsing.
Yeah.
So we can actually put the theoretical aside because the CAIs were challenged during the BEAD challenge process, and so only the ones that managed to flip themselves during the BEAD challenge are eligible for funding. So there's probably plenty of as we saw in Bourne, we had lots of CAIs labeled as having fiber. 1 gig up and 1 gig down. You can theoretically do that with cable under perfect circumstances with the stuff they're just barely rolling out in certain locations. But realistically, there was a lot of locations with fiber that didn't actually have fiber, and so there's a lot of CAIs in the whole state. Whatever contractor was contracted to put together the list made frequent errors in Bourne, and we saw frequent errors in many towns. And so it's only the CAIs that were challenged during BEAD. And so that list is what MBI has out now, because you can't, like, in MBI's logic, you can't ex post facto say, hey, we missed some. Well, no, you had the challenge window, and that's, that was your shot. And if you missed it, it sucks to be you. That's the rules of how BEAD is set up. So it is the list that they put out. The one caveat is, I think the provider winning the grant has to also again prove there's no fiber available to that location already, but the list is up and out, and theoretically we don't have to go back and check again who has access, because that happened during the challenge.
Okay, so some decision points here. First, Brian has authored and I did some editing on 2 emails, essentially information gathering to go to MBI immediately. Have you folks had a chance to read those? Have any
Yep.
questions about them? Any errors? The question is, should those go off?
Yeah,
We need your advice.
I think they were excellent. My only, I think maybe in something that we want the select board to send out, we need to be more succinct. I mean, this points out, I mean, there's 1,000 holes in this MBI thing. And I think we should certainly focus on the fact that the current way these possible BEAD grants will be administered will basically eliminate any competition. I think that's one thing that will resonate with everybody on any level.
Well, there's
But
2
then-
ways to submit comment. So there's the formal front door channel that they actually don't email us back. They put it in an FAQ for the whole state to read. And then there's always the direct phone calls, select board calling them, emailing people directly. So there's like 2 ways we can do it. Most of these questions I was opting to put through the formal, hey, this is unclear for everyone. Put those in, get those answers public for everybody channel. If we want to do something different, that's a committee to decide if we recommend it to the select board or not. So, but I mostly wrote them with the intent of the front door official comment box.
I
Um,
think,
It
I think
would
that's
seem that
good.
if we had to wait for the select board to read it and think about it and sign it, we would miss the window.
Well, it's March 10th is the window, if I'm not
Well,
mistaken.
no, that's
Like I
so
said,
that's for
I
support
don't think
letters.
they're gonna,
So
they wouldn't have it
Okay.
done by then.
it's tighter for these questions because they have to answer them and get them out to all the providers to bid sooner than that. And apps are due like later this month. So we really have to decide that we like these questions, edit them and put them in so that MBI can generate answers in time. There's not enough time to get this type of information gathering before the select board approved and to get actionable answers on it.
Also,
Again,
if
this
it
is-
goes up on their public site, other people are gonna see it. And there's something to be said for that.
Well, other people are generating the same, when we get down to contacts with other folks, other
Good.
people are generating the same kinds of questions. It would seem to me that, if we got, again, speaking not as the chair or anything, but this is information gathering. So it's
Yes.
perfectly within our purview to go ahead and do this and provide guidance back to the select board. And my reading is that, personal reading is we should get this into MBI as quickly as possible. And then at the same time, be ready for with actions, recommendations for the select board in time for, well, we're not on Tuesday's meeting, tomorrow's meeting. Hopefully we can get time on the next meeting beyond that with some actionable suggestions or recommendations to the select board. Do we recommend that the select board revoke their letter of support, at least for Comcast, because of evidence that they have not, at least in their BEAD application and grant, met the conditions that were specified. So we would get that in. That would go in prior to. Let's see. I'm doing my head. So that meeting is on the.
Brian, quick question, if I may.
Sure.
So the process you're suggesting, Brian, is the original
There is a.
portal that through this whole challenge process that you were able to submit questions and information and data. Is that right?
There is a specific email inbox for questions that they
Right.
will then add to the FAQ.
But it was
For
all
everybody.
part of the BEAD challenge process and gap.
Yeah. Yeah,
funding
this was laid out
process.
like
So-
2 years ago that they had to have a question portal. This was laid out far,
Right,
far, far
Right,
long
so you're
ago.
just trying to gather additional information to advise the select board on next steps, correct?
Correct. Stuff that
Exactly.
is unclear to us, even after reading every single document, going to every single meeting and trying to get an answer. We don't
Right,
have answers
right.
to these questions.
Okay,
And we need them in order to give good advice.
right.
And
So I don't
the
think
work,
that's a formal, sorry, Bob.
go ahead.
I don't think that's a formal process where we preempted select board authorization. This is all part of what you've already been tasked to do with respect
yeah.
to the process.
Right. Presuming the next step would be we would get answers to those. If they were completely to our liking and that, there would be free and open competition for the remaining bead money, we would report that to the select board that everything is doing fine. If in fact they said, no, we're going to go with our January 17th ruling that we're in fact going to short circuit all funding directly to GAP awardees, then I think probably at our next meeting, which I think has to be Thursday, just to be able to advise the select board beforehand, there may be a motion to revoke for this recommendation to the select board to revoke the letter of support to Comcast that hopefully would get on the agenda on the meeting on the 11th, and we would that would get back to the MBI prior to their board meeting sometime around the 15th, plus or minus a few days.
And to be
Is
sure,
there-
we don't know. Like MBI could award between now and the board meeting. We don't know what the delegated authority is here. So like we're just hoping that the board meeting is the date. So we're risking by not getting this in front of the select board for a vote to withdraw. We're risking the award being granted while we're doing this
So it's
because
got
the
to happen right away.
MBI won't confirm the drop dead date.
I think, do I recall that at one point MJ had a meeting that was originated by somebody, one of our legislators' assistants, facilitated a meeting with MJ and MBI regarding some other issues, and I'm wondering whether something similar might be in the works. We could start with a letter, but go from there, because I just think that once the select board understands the absurdity of the situation where they just changed the rules, it's like, imagine a 7-game NBA playoff, and they're just sitting in the middle. Oh, by the way, the team that won game 1, they just won the whole series. That's nuts. It makes no sense. And I think if we make that clear to the select board and possibly our local legislators, someone will get through to MBI and say, wait a minute, you need to review this. This can't be right. You can't block out competition for this rather large award, possibly because they didn't get a very early GAP grant. The two things have nothing to do with each other.
I have a question to Anne Marie and actually to the whole group. Do we see benefit or possibly some harm if I were to go to the select board meeting tomorrow night and give a focused 1-minute high-level heads-up overview to the select board that this is coming and it's coming very quickly and they will need to make decisions very quickly to protect the interests of Bourne?
You get 3 minutes.
Well, again, I can make 3 points in a short period of time that they will remember. So this is something that I would have to script. I'm not going to take 3 minutes. I'm not going to, no handouts, no nothing. Anne Marie, do you see benefit or harm for that? You know those folks.
I think a heads up is, even if it is a public comment on a non-agenda item, might
Yes.
be of value since it will become an agenda item.
And
Right.
if you, I suppose, formally and procedurally speaking, every single one of us could get 3 minutes of the public comment, and we could each. I know we wouldn't do that, but you do have 3 minutes. You don't have to do it in one.
It'll be very short. Again, for a short presentation like that, the audience can come away and remember 2, maybe 3 points, nothing beyond that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, this is like the public comment version of a TikTok presentation, frankly. Um, but okay.
I think it's a good idea. And I think the idea of pointing out that basically, in so many words, all the competition has been eliminated is the point you have to make. Because I think every member of the select board, if you say something like that to them, they will all immediately take notice.
So I think we agree. I think we agree that the Comcast letter, our recommendation to the select board is going to be the Comcast letter should be revoked.
I think, I'll mention that as perhaps one worst case possibility, unless we get very satisfactory clarifying answers to information that we send out today. Okay. In time for, well, that's not going to happen by
No,
tomorrow
so
night.
the questions we're asking today aren't going to impact that decision. So that ship sailed. The questions we're asking today are to weigh how likely someone is going to be able to serve locations under BEAD. And so that more comes down to, do we recommend what we recommend after? So assuming the support letter is revoked, what's the recommendation after is more
Okay. Yeah.
impacted
Okay.
by the questions today, not whether the revoke should happen. That we already have everything we're going to get on that.
I think we should point out that as one possibility, because the town does have a relationship with this particular ISP, and that may be a drastic measure. So I think we should absolutely point out that that is one option they have.
That, to be fair, the town has business relationships with Comcast, with Verizon, and with Open Cape. Okay.
Right.
So,
And
okay.
and when we wrote the Gap 1 letter, at that time, there was no language that they would apply to Gap 2 or to BEAD. And MBI has since changed the rules. So that letter was strictly Gap 1. So, and then MBI decided to change the rules and allow it for Gap 2 and BEAD, with BEAD having more caveats, so we'll discuss it at a later date. And so this is a little bit, that was a surprise, and telling us we need to revoke the letter if we don't support the project was a surprise. And awarding the money under GAP that was gained under BEAD is a surprise. None of this was telegraphed in advance. All of this was unexpected and drastically changes the scenario from the time that letter was penned.
And again, a lot of this was facilitated. The call with Mr. Baldino was facilitated by Senator Moran's aide. Is that right, Brian? In the past?
Yeah, in the past, Senator Moran's aide, Nicole Manfredi, was extremely helpful in assisting with that.
Just to point out, again, you only get answers like this. We got answers like this mainly because we pressed hard. Okay. If a laissez-faire approach to this, we would find out at the end, when the award grant awards are signed, that this whole process happened in the background, and it's only through pressing very hard that we got them to admit that they're doing these rule changes behind, without public comment, etc.
And this MBI has a track record of very short deadlines and not a lot of transparency. This is a new record for fire drill. Like I've never seen anything this not telegraphed even out of MBI. So, don't shoot the messenger that the timeline is almost non-existent here. I would personally want an emergency meeting with the select board to withdraw this. I know there's a lot on the agenda and that might not be viable, but that's the level of this problem. And we have a chance to make generational change to Bourne here. We are at the, cusp of actually solving the problem for a very large area of Bourne. And, the amount of money is unheard of here. So this is a very serious moment, and, we need to recommend very carefully here. or suffer for decades.
Okay, so the way forward is I am going to make some comments during public comment tomorrow evening to the select board. And I'll probably draft them or bullet point them, script them a bit. I'll probably consult with one or two of you about exactly what those are. One of the options to say that this committee is considering is to recommend to the select board to immediately withdraw the letter of support for Comcast bid at least. And from what we can tell, the other bidder, Verizon, complied with the requirements that we put in their letter. In any case, and that we will be considering at our Thursday meeting, and I'm going to put it back on the agenda for Thursday. Maybe we could. It has to be Thursday so that it could. The recommendation could go to the select board, hopefully to get on the agenda for February 11th.
And that's a tough. Do we want to start discussing those two paths? Assuming a revoke today, because we have it in the packet I sent out. Or do we want to move that to Thursday? Because that's a tough call there. Like that's not one they're both good. They're both in the net public benefit.
That would be a letter that comes from the select board that goes to MBI revoking and to Comcast revoking the letter of support. I think we should start drafting that and have that available for discussion at a meeting on Thursday to be transmitted. A recommendation to withdraw it, and here's a draft letter to actually do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think we need to consider that very carefully because the question is, we don't first of all know whether Comcast is saying that they're willing to meet those provisions that we put in. Oh, you asked. Okay.
I asked, and they refused to answer any questions in writing, refusing to answer any questions until after the award is final.
Oh, okay.
Well, isn't that convenient?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
In other words, you can't question that until after the date when you can possibly influence the decision. Okay.
And they are aware of what we understand because we've already shared the information we've gathered with the Cape Tech Council. So Comcast is aware of what we know and is still refusing to answer anything. So it won't catch them by surprise.
Okay. So that's the way forward. I'm gonna at least outline a draft of a letter that the select board would send withdrawing that previous letter of support that was sent ostensibly for Gap 1. Okay, it's going to be 2 paragraphs, and that will be up for consideration at our meeting on Thursday. I'll give the select board a heads up that we're going to have a potential letter stating such for their consideration, maybe for their consideration if it gets voted out of this committee on Thursday. Is that the appropriate approach? That gives due process.
And we need to let them know, we need to warn them, because I know the select board doesn't like surprises,
Right.
we will then also need another slot on the select board agenda for BEAD letters of support, since those are due shortly. So we've already been approached by one provider. That's further down the agenda? Well, I'll talk about it then.
Where is it on this? It is not on the agenda. It's still under this discussion item. So
okay. Is part of BEAD or GAP? Well, this one's part of BEAD, so.
My suggestion on letters of support is that we kind of mimic the one that was given to the difficulty with BEAD is that MBI has changed the rules again after we put conditions on, and I guess it was only Bourne put conditions on Comcast's letter of support to say that any letters of support for BEAD have to be unconditional. Okay.
Mhm.
And there's some
So,
ambiguity in the wording, so hence why we want it in stone, like clear, crystal clear. So that's why those are additional questions going to them, because there is some wiggle room, but like 90% sure the letters of support for BEAD have to be unconditional.
if we were to submit a conditional letter of support to Comcast, um, would MBI just reject it outright and not allow Comcast to use it?
It looks
What
like
would be,
that's the way they wrote it. That
yeah,
when I read that paragraph, that's exactly what they're going to do. They said they wouldn't be accepted.
I think we just modify that letter and say, my suggestion, submit it again and say, um, any award that does not comply with these conditions is unacceptable to the town of Bourne. You know, just something very specific added on to that.
And
And then,
NTIA even, and we have the support of NTIA. They literally say in it that the BEAD program was supposed to take into account needs and preferences of local municipalities, and
Mhm.
they were invited to express an opinion of what they wanted in their territory. The town has already expressed an opinion and a preference, and MBI is trying to remove our ability to express a preference when NTIA specifically calls this out that that's supposed to be allowed.
Wendy, can I task you with taking the previous letters of support and drafting three, one for Verizon, which could be the same letter we had before, one for Open Cape, on the presumption that they would be a potential bidder who submits applications and requests a letter of support at the last minute, and then another one for Comcast. That latter one would be, the last one would be something that we would debate and wordsmith at our meeting on next Thursday.
Okay.
Is that okay? It shouldn't be too difficult to do. We can get you an address for Open Cape. But
Well, wouldn't they pretty much be the same letters that we had before?
I
sure,
think basically the Verizon one, we might have to take out some of the Verizon one's probably the base and iterate from there. That's probably the one that's most accurate, especially since Bourne is predominantly going to be CAIs, minus a few of the missed VSLs under GAP.
the difference would be you would probably take out the condition on FWA.
Oh no,
Uh,
we definitely don't want FWA being used for it. We might
well,
have to remove it though, if it has to be unconditional, I
Yeah.
guess. But
I
the
thought the
condition's
letter
fiber.
was only FTTH. But
Mhm.
we could look back on it. I have copies. I can send you, Wendy, if you don't have them.
I believe I do, but go ahead if you can put your hands on them quickly.
Yeah, I'll have to go upstairs. But yeah, I can do it today sometime. I think I
right.
remember drafting the Verizon letter, and I don't recall that we basically said with the understanding that they would provide fiber, fiber to the home. That was the point that was made to us
Yes.
by Ellen
I
from
have the
the
signed copy because I have
yeah.
Verizon's copy.
Right. Yeah. So that was the point that was made to us, is that their intention, even though they were going to make FWA available, Ellen from Verizon said that their intention was to fiber the entire Cape, fiber to the home in all the towns eventually.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and in the grant there, for the places they won money and or when they applied for GAP too, they were going to use 100% fiber to reach the locations they were awarded.
Okay.
Just like we saw in Falmouth. They weren't ready to commit to the whole town, but we also did not leave that as a condition of our letter. It is 100% fiber. The tech was 100% fiber. They're building fiber. There was no FWA in their GAP application. That requirement becomes more important under BEAD because of the ultra high cost location threshold. Cuttyhunk is more likely ultra high cost, but we don't know where they're drawing the line if
Mhm.
Bassett's is gonna be ultra high cost. Bassett's is abnormally high, but it's not maybe ultra high. So we don't know, like, the definition isn't set yet of where the line is, so
Right.
it may or
Well-
may not be a factor there.
Okay,
In any case-
I will take those and riff off of them. And anybody that has any phraseology or other ideas they want me to incorporate, just shoot me a quick email and I'll do that.
And again, these are short letters, so we can wordsmith
Yeah.
them very efficiently in our meeting. And again, we will have those approved by the committee and recommended to the select board in anticipation of any of these three companies submitting requests for these. One point, if you didn't see that, New England Broadband has disbanded. That initiative basically couldn't come up with appropriate funding, so they can't. They've disbanded. They've notified Falmouth of that, so they're not going to be a player here. So effectively, we have three companies that are going to be competing to provide services under BEAD. Okay, with that, that's a way forward. That's quite a bit of work to do in 3 days before the next meeting, but we'll get her done.
Do we need to have any kind of a vote regarding the submission of Brian's well-worded questions to MBI? Because
I
I'm
don't
in
think
favor
so.
of submitting them like now. You know?
Okay. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to submit the two emails to MBI today.
Today, I'll second John's motion. I think
okay,
it should go today.
Okay, again, we're going to do a roll call. Brian,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Wendy,
Aye.
Bob, aye. Okay, good. So that passes unanimously. Okay, with that, that's a big agenda here.
Oh,
But
should we? Yeah. Okay. I'll use some description. We might need to edit it, one of them slightly before it goes, but for the sending questions today will happen.
okay, and again, anything to do that makes sense to everybody who reads them. My one fear about any of the details of this is I don't want to get the select board too lost in detail. The big
Right.
decision points here are knowledge that we are being treated unfairly in terms of competitive services in the process. Number two, accordingly, we can withdraw our letter of support, and that's a decision for them. And number three, we want them to approve, probably on the 11th, pre-approve three letters of support to the three companies in anticipation of their asking for those prior to March 10th. Okay?
Should we already make a motion for vote to withdraw as a recommendation to the select board? The committee is recommending the withdrawal of the Comcast letter at this time.
I will tell them that we are considering that. That's a motion that's going to be on the table for our next meeting. Okay? On Thursday morning, which again is prior.
We have enough info for that one. What we don't have enough info on is what outcome's better.
Okay, I'm gonna entertain that as a motion, as a preliminary approval of a recommendation, again to be reconsidered on Thursday morning with a draft of a letter to Comcast withdrawing that letter. So we both we finalized that vote on Thursday with a draft of the letter that gets sent to MJ that day, next Thursday, for consideration at the next meeting on the 11th.
Yeah, that will have the other details that we have to hash out. But as far as revoking the Comcast letter, I think we're ready to support that. That limited scope. So I move to withdraw the Comcast support letter.
Okay, the motion is you move to recommend to the select board that the select board withdraw their letter of support.
Correct. Yep.
To Comcast.
Well, I would say unless they are willing to specify in detail how they plan to meet the requirements that we put forth in our original letter of recommendation.
Well, isn't that what we're going to talk about on Thursday?
Yeah, see, that's why I'm
Finalize on that?
concerned, because I mean, if we go to them and say, look, either you tell us you can do this or we'll have to withdraw, that's more fair than just unilaterally withdrawing it.
Want me to forward the emails where they refuse to answer? And the data that
Right,
shows that they can't meet it?
but they were not answering to you. I would think that if they don't answer to the select board, that that's a more official matter. That's all I'm saying. I don't know.
We could attach those to our recommendation with the draft letter that we're going to write and finalize on Thursday, and that can go to the select board.
The select board will
Board.
definitely discuss this. So,
They better.
again, we're not going to get any clarifying information prior to Thursday, and Thursday is the drop dead date to make a recommendation to the select board for them to vote on it on the 11th prior to a mid-month meeting of the MBI board. So,
I hope they don't drop the final gap word between now and then. It's a possibility.
mhm. Okay, well, just to be honest, there's a we'll go on to the next agenda item. I think it's pretty straight. So we have the motion on the floor right now, and let's get the wording on this one right. As a friendly amendment here, move to draft a letter for consideration by the select board to remove, withdraw the town's letter of support for Comcast's gap application. So if we have this drafted, such letter to be finalized and voted upon at the next SciTac meeting on what is it, the 7th? Is
6th.
that right? 6th.
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second,
Is that wording okay with just to discuss, is that wording okay with Brian? Just to make sure
Sounds fine. Yeah.
so it's not a finalization, but it's, we're definitely moving in that direction.
Right.
There's no doubt about that.
right. I've got to
Okay.
open the door, so if we can have a vote quickly so I can open the
Yeah,
door. For this
okay. John,
time. Aye.
okay, Brian,
Aye.
Wendy,
Aye.
Chair, aye. Okay, that passes. Okay, John, we can start. This is just general information here with no deliberation on the Tech Council and Mass Broadband Coalition held a joint meeting where they tried to brief everybody on this, and some of the other towns, et cetera, expressed the same consternation that we did, without going into broad detail. And other parties, other towns, Barnstable, for instance, appears to be victimized by the same process. And a lot of the other parties are now looking at their options through the legislature, through contacts in state agencies, maybe legal. So that's all going forward right now in the background. I don't have anything specific to report out on that, but clearly these rules changes are high priority for any of the entities that are trying to get some of this gap and BEAD funding. One piece of information is that for whatever reason, the Verizon application for the town of Mashpee for some reason was withdrawn. And Brian, do you remember the reason for that? Brian, are you there? Uh-oh, he's having problems.
Yeah, we don't know why Verizon withdrew their Mashpee application, but
They had some sort of a coordinated joint application that included Sandwich, Mashpee, and Falmouth, with a big horseshoe around Bourne. And for some reason, the application for Mashpee, for some technical or other reason, was withdrawn, and we don't know that. Let me see if John's back.
don't know why. I can theorize all day long, but don't have anything concrete as to why. I could see like 3 or 4 different plausible reason, and no evidence to support any of them. So I'm not even gonna speculate.
My
we have-
understanding,
I'm sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead, Wendy.
I was just looking at the agenda. We haven't done DOR fiber funding, or is there just nothing going on there?
We haven't gotten down that far yet.
Okay, because that
Okay,
was
we're still under the Tech Council, Mass Broadband, and liaison with other towns. Okay.
okay.
I'm going to wait for John to come back. If
Okay.
anybody is watching on TV, you can. We have a short break. John, are you back yet?
Don't see him.
No. Okay. Okay. When he shows up on the seat, we'll wait a couple of minutes. Okay. I don't want to adjourn the meeting because we've got other things that we have to get to here. And I hope his problem is less bad than my neighbors. I spent all night Saturday trying to help the fire department get into my neighbor's vacant house while all of their smoke alarms were going off.
Oh dear.
And then they did get in at 3 a.m. I'm still yawning from that. They got in at 3 a.m. and the fire department immediately detected gas, backed out, called the gas company, and they turned the heat off for the gas off for the entire house. And the residents came down from the Boston area and immediately started draining all their pipes in the middle of the night, and because it was 12 degrees when we woke up Sunday morning. So the joys of owning a second house. Okay, John. No, John. Okay. Again, for anybody watching on TV, we're in a short hiatus while one of our committee members has to deal with a contractor at his house, and we need him for the quorum. So
I'll be right back.
So I cannot proceed with anything further on the agenda.
Here he is.
Here we go. Okay. Welcome back, John.
Yeah, hi, I'm back. I just had to get the contractor situated here.
No worries. Okay, that's great. Okay. Again, I just mentioned that there was a joint phone call, Zoom call with the Tech Council and the Broadband Coalition members too. And among others, Barnstable appears to be in the same situation. They mentioned specifically that they got a non-responsive application under GAP, leaving out a number of places that they declared as ineligible without any evidence or justification, just so that they could get a small grant under GAP, and they found out again that the money for BEAD was not going to be bid; it was going to be a sole source addition to a GAP grant. Okay. Brian, would you like to go through and just discuss our contacts with the Mashpee Wampanoag?
Sure, in a second. I've got the maps of all the towns Comcast applied to, and it's basically every single one they've got exempted locations. So it's the whole state, really. Yeah, Brookline, Chelmsford, just flipping through it. Yeah, so it's not just like any one town singled out. Whoever, oh, we got one. Nope, that has exempted. Sorry, I thought I saw one that did not have any.
So
yeah, there's widespread exemptions throughout the entire state that, and we know the ones in Bourne and Barnstable were inappropriately applied.
So my interpretation is that they submitted dozens of applications and essentially picked the low-hanging fruit as eligible and declared everything else that they did not want to serve or would be too expensive as ineligible. And they got a bunch of small grants statewide.
114 pages of town maps here. So it's 114 towns they submitted with, presumably, because I haven't found a single one yet without exempted. They put it in 114 towns, give or take.
Okay. And the exemption is the most egregious for us because we have that census block group and 1,000 on or underserved locations. Anyway, moving on. So the Mashpee Wampanoag again?
Mashpee Wampanoag, we met with them since they had some questions about all this bead and gap, and they didn't know how to parse their data. Or they typically have a consultant doing it, so it was interesting that they themselves wanted to understand this. Who's that? But yeah, so they themselves wanted to understand that. So we met with them for like an hour and walked through their bead list. We saw that it looked like gap wasn't impacting their bead list, so we told them we got to go back to MBI and check with Verizon if they're still serving, and they come to find out that they're not. So Mashpee is attempting to go after the bead grants one way or another through themselves or through a contractor. We're not sure of the strategy, but help them understand the various factors here, which was the gap. Also, the FCC broadband maps have changed, which is a little bit unexpected that should impact the bead list, since bead was generated off the 2023 list. So a lot of towns are starting to have locations removed from the fabric, which is FCC's way of saying they don't exist, or somebody submitted to the FCC that they serve that location, and so they're getting removed, possibly inappropriately, since towns were working off 2023 data, and that was supposed to be the governing maps. So this is a little bit of an unexpected change, having the FCC maps do this now. It's, I'm not sure if this is just an MBI change, because that should have been telegraphed in advance that we need to be ignoring the 2023 maps and using the newer ones, and then challenging the newer maps, because the newer maps were going to dictate who gets the money. So that's not what MBI told everybody 2 years ago, a year ago, that's how this is supposed to work.
Okay.
So,
well,
flagging it for every time we see it in, and everyone's got this problem and trying to figure out why it is and how do we appeal it. I don't know yet how to appeal that. That's something we got to ask MBI like next. Like, how do we appeal all these locations that are incorrectly marked as served or removed from the fabric, but that due to the FCC change, not the challenge. So.
Okay, well, I'm going to just leave it at that. Just moving forward, clearly staying in communication with other towns, with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe is useful. And we can compare notes on what locations get, as Brian just said, incorrectly excluded from the process, which changes how the applications come in from the applicants, particularly incumbents. With regard to, so I call that as a kind of an umbrella regional approach to broadband. We're not doing anything specific on that. There's no organization to do all of that at once right now. So the only possibility is if somebody like Open Cape has a truly open system and allows people to connect up to multiple ISPs served out of Boston or Providence. And again, their model is evolving towards providing residential service as opposed to high reliability, super high reliability for businesses, hospitals, etc. So we'll keep an eye on that. In terms of application for DOR fiber funding under item F, we're not doing anything on that right now. This other stuff is much too critical. Potentially that's something that could come up in a future year if we need to connect, say, the new fire station on Clay Pond Road right off of Route 28. That could be this DOR funding, but we'll leave that in abeyance for the time being. A digital equity plan. Again, we already discussed that a little bit as we mentioned early on in the minutes. Anne Marie, if you could talk to the library board just to make sure that they're in communication, with spending of the town money, and at some point, as soon as the this ransomware issue is put to bed and remedied, protected against, and then at that point, whatever services are available from the county, et cetera, we are available to talk to them in terms of specifying specific equipment if they want advice on that. That's free consulting other than having to pay somebody to do it. The next thing is the fiber service to the Barlow's Landing cell tower. That has been docketed by the Cape Cod Commission, and I haven't followed further on exactly what the status of that is. I think there's a 90-day open comment period right now, and my question to the committee is, should we provide any comments after we get over the hump of the BEAD application? Should we provide any comments to the Cape Cod Commission regarding the cell tower? Yeah, again, that's going to be a potential site for fixed wireless access. Do we want to say we're in favor of that? We're not in favor of that? Would they even have Cape Cod Commission have that in the purview of their review? I do not know. Anybody who has guidance on that, please let me know.
I think that the town would have to be favor or disfavor. I just have questions of data that we want to know in general, which is just where are they sourcing the middle mile fiber to reach it, since we need to stay abreast of who's putting what where, since oftentimes getting MBI to tell us what their data is from is non-existent. So we need to be is in touch with all the people laying fiber and where they're laying it, so we have an understanding of what's out there.
The little I saw on the information from the applicant was he was going to build a pole, and if he builds it, they will come, and we would entertain. He probably has letters of interest from several companies to attach once the pole is built and licensed. So I'm not sure any of the detailed information about the individual providers where they're going to feed from. We can try to get that.
To that point, and Brian, you told us to look at that attachment to the agenda of the last select board meeting, which I did, and you probably saw the thing from the Department of Public Utilities or whoever it was, that the state is going to be asking all the owners of every pole to state what they've got and what their arrangement is in terms of leasing to other suppliers. I think the long-term idea had more to do with fiber and also with possibly electric supply for recharging electric vehicles.
I did not see that one. I was looking at a different thing in there.
It's 3/4 of the way down. You should read it. But remember, we talked about the fact that some of the pole owners were resistant to revealing information about how many poles they had, what the condition was, et cetera. And you just may want to look at it, because this seems to be saying that the state wants all of this information. So if the state gets it, I think as a matter of public record, that might be available to us for future planning.
That smells like MBI pushing the state level to do that, because they had told me they were someday planning a quality of service and possibly a cell phone based program. And my response to them was, well, you better have an army of consultants to give the towns, because no one's going to donate any labor to you ever again with how hard BEAD was. So be ready with your army of consultants and data and help if you want us to participate.
John, when you say pole owners, you're not talking about every utility pole.
Yes, every utility pole. It points out
Wow.
everybody. It says, NSTAR. It says National Grid, Verizon, et cetera. It says everybody that owns a pole, we're going to want some accounting of it, and what you have, how the pole is configured, what are you charging? They're reaching out right now. There's like a notice of inquiry out there And it's up. Yeah.
Just for reference, if you haven't looked at that, the document is in the select board packet for
the agenda for the last select board meeting.
yes, exactly, and it's in the packet back on around page 48. Okay, and it's quite a long document.
Yes.
So yeah, I think this is something that we follow, and once the data are accumulated, at least for Bourne, we file a FOIA request to get those data, because at that point, once they go to the state, they're public information.
Right, because we were talking about spending $50,000, if you recall, to get that information at one point.
Right.
We managed to get a lower quality data set, but was good enough from the Cape Cod Commission, which is the poll, we call it a GIS file, because they had done an aerial survey. And so we were able to do rough math off of that, which was very helpful. But having the actual what's on it and capacity and everything, that'd be great. That'd be so beneficial for the whole state in planning.
Just for anybody,
just for my use in note taking. I know this discussion has come up under the fiber service to the Barlow's Landing cell tower, but this sounds like a separate issue.
it is. If you look on the agenda, actually, John has jumped ahead. We're at item new business number 5C. Full attachment review. It's that by the state DPU and Department of Telecommunications. So you can put that under that and just reorder it, and then we're done with the.
The reason I brought it up was because we talked about how they're going to get fiber to the new monopole. That's the only reason I brought it up.
Right. Okay. I'm going to move back up a new business to item A. Again, the folks on Monument Beach were complaining. They send me emails periodically. They were complaining about Comcast adding new $20 a month charges for a couple of sports channels, and then eliminating a couple of other stations on cable TV. If I'm not mistaken, I can't remember exactly what they were. One is New England Sports Network, which means the Red Sox and the Celtics, etc.
And the Bruins. Bob, I can explain it because I am
go ahead
an addicted sports fan. What they basically did was move a number of the New England-based sports venues to another tier. So that would be NESN, NESN, and NBC Sports, which carries the Celtics. NESN has the Bruins and the Red Sox. And they basically boosted it up to a tier that's $20 more a year, but it's going to be more like, if I'm not mistaken, closer to $50 a year after 1 year. They claim in some of the things that I read that there were 2 tiers you could move to, but at least my own experience was that I only had one choice, and I could be corrected on this. My choice was to go to the higher tier, which was I'm trying to remember now. Let me take a look at it. Oh yeah, okay. It was let's see. They call it wait a minute, Ultimate TV. They also had one that they called Digital Preferred, which I couldn't find. So I had to move to Ultimate, which I did. And it gives you, besides the sports channels, it basically gives you every channel that's not a deep pay channel. Like you're not going to get any of the really big like movie channels like HBO, but you get a lot of other stuff, a lot of smaller channels that I was kind of missing with the package. Plus they offered you, and it was amazing, it was less money to boost my internet download speed from 500 to 600, supposedly to 800. Now, in my own personal testing, I found that most of the time it really hasn't gone up that much, but there was one day where I was able to get a 900 megabit download. So it says up to, and it was when I signed up for the service, it actually showed that if I went for the higher grade of internet, it actually lowered my bill. Now, that may be just, I'm not sure if that's a marketing thing or if that's going to change in a year. I really don't know. But basically around here, everybody is being forced to go to the ultimate package, and that is $20 now. And I believe that the full price is going to be much more than that. They'll end up with a $40 to $50 increase after a year.
Just to just to let you know, I did what research I could, and this is across the entire Comcast system. It's not just Bourne or anything else. They're
Right.
doing it to everyone. And again, this was a part of the impetus of the people asking when we're going to have
I have a work
Verizon
sync
Fios.
downstairs, Brett. Oh, you do? Yeah. Sorry, guys. Hold on.
No worries.
Okay. Yeah. Let me.
That it would be Verizon service. When Verizon service was going to be town-wide so that they could not have to deal with this from Comcast or competitively get TV over fiber or coax cable at competitive prices, since presumably Comcast would lower its prices if Fios was offering TV. In any case, uh, does anyone see any action that we could possibly do that would reverse this or have any control over this? We are the cable provider, not the cable provider, the cable committee for the town, the official cable committee.
Don't we have some data collection powers as part of the cable committee to request answers to questions and stuff like this? I can't remember what the powers are as far as this contract.
Yeah. Our
we
chart
do.
says we can do that.
That's true, but what actionable data can we possibly get, to be honest? Okay.
John, you're the expert on it. What would you want to know about this if you could get answers?
What I would want to know
sports.
is how much of this is being driven by the cost that the regional sports networks are charging Comcast. And I would think that part of it is because if you look at what is, for instance, if you want to subscribe to Nesson directly to stream it, it's $30 a month, $360 a year. So right there, you got a major. It's gone up quite a bit. So the regional sports networks are looking to capitalize in this type of situation, and so I'm not sure exactly how much, but I think a lot of that charge may be based on that fact.
So do you want to draft a letter with the questions, and then we can, while you do that, we'll re-review what the scope is of what we're allowed to ask, and then possibly at a future meeting.
I can draft a very short letter that would just explain to us why. I mean, basically what I've seen, and I mean, this actually came out in some of the industry trades that I get, magazines that I get before it went national. There's a lot of stuff going on. Comcast is looking possibly to sell. Well, they do want to break apart their networks right now. Take some of the minor stuff like CNBC, MSNBC, and break them off from, say, Peacock and NBC. Then there's another talk that they might want to sell the television broadcast network or their O&O stations separately. There's a lot going on with Comcast right now. But from our viewpoint, we would just want to know how they justify the cost.
If you can draft the letter, we'll consider that at a future meeting. I will leave this.
Yeah.
I'll move this up to.
I'm sorry. Pots and Pans today said Comcast stock has dropped 25% lately.
They lost more subscribers in a quarter than anticipated.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people are going to streaming, and honestly,
sure. Why
if
not?
it wasn't for some of the specialty channels that, I think I may have a friend that he's a sports fan, but he's not necessarily a Bruins and a Red Sox sports fan. And he's living up North Shore. He's got Verizon and he has YouTube, and he's very, very happy with it for the most part. Occasionally it does glitch out, though. Not due necessarily to his local service, but just nationally. Some of the providers are having an issue with when they get millions and millions and millions of people watching a game. Occasionally they can have an issue, although lately Amazon had one of the playoff games a few weeks ago and they did very, very well.
Okay,
so they're working on it.
Again, I'm going to move this up to old business for subsequent discussion here, as well as the poll attachment review. The last item that I have under new business is that Brian and I sat in on an online presentation from a company called Aqualink that was hosted by the Falmouth Net folks. And Aqualink, the short description is they have a product that they run fiber inside a conduit that they run inside water mains.
Whoa.
And they have ways to get the kind of at every place where there's a valve or some kind of an access point inside a water main. They have a way to bring that up to the surface and run it into a connection box in a surface box or on a nearby utility pole, and then do backhauls to individual locations to provide service. And I mentioned a few places where this has worked. There's the city of Anacortes, Washington, which I'm familiar with, has provided town-wide fiber service through all the water mains, and it is much less expensive than new trenching and less expensive than hanging off of poles.
More than it's between the cost of poles and new trenching.
Yeah,
there's more than poles, but less than new conduit in the ground.
But that's presuming the poles all are fully capable of
Yeah.
taking all of the weight of new fiber.
Correct. Yeah.
Any place where you have old poles and they would have to be replaced, then all of a sudden this is extremely competitive.
Yeah, as soon as you see like in a high level analysis, this is where we have to dig. That's usually meant the poles were so bad that they're burying it. So this becomes a third option in like those locations that are where the poles are atrocious, or the only way through is there's no other way through, like rocks and things like that. And if there's an existing water pipe, they can go through it.
Anyway, something that's competitive and out there. Steve Johnston of Open Cape heard about this and said, "Oh, excellent! That is a way that he has customers in New Bedford that he can potential customers that he cannot reach because of bad poles, other issues in the city, and this would be a way that potentially he could get to them. So this is a possible future solution." Okay. With that, I have no other business right now. I think we've been talking, and I just want to confirm our next meeting will be Thursday morning, 9 a.m. And what I will add is, under old business, item A remains the same. Virtually everything else remains the same. A couple of the items below, I will take Aqualink off. We won't have anything to say about that. But the
Do we need to have the digital equity plan implementation at this point? Which is item G, 4G?
We do not.
Okay.
I did put in the little discussion on whoever it is that's using some of their digital equity money for doing train the trainer sorts of things.
Okay,
and I think that's a great idea, and we should implement that. We should keep that going.
We can leave it on the agenda, even if we have nothing to say about it. The same with DOR funding. Something might pop up in the interim. I'd prefer to leave all of these things as they pretty much are. Well, the bulk of our discussion is going to be under old business item A. Gap bead. There's going to be I'll have a readout on my public comments, etc. I may well submit to you just a draft, a bullet point of what I am saying or said. So that'll be there for information more than anything else. And then some feedback on, again, there won't be any feedback from the select board because they can't for public comment, but it's, again, a heads up that we are going to have stuff, the letters. So I don't think we need to specifically say that we're going to be considering a letter for consideration by the select board to withdraw, etc., or that we're going to be reviewing letters of support, draft letters of support available to send if the companies select them. I don't think we have to get into the weeds that detailed on the agenda. Is that okay with everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, and we will proceed, and you folks can tune in on Zoom or TV tomorrow evening and see what I have to say. The only reactions I'm going to be able to report back is how high the eyebrows on some of the members of the select board go when they hear this, because they can't say anything. And we'll go from there. Okay.
Motion
With
to
that,
adjourn?
John makes the motion.
Second.
Someone? Brian seconds. Okay, Wendy,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Bob, the chair. Aye. With that,
Aye.
at what is it? It's 10:39. We have adjourned. And thank you everybody who's listening on TV.